something and it went off and you got caught.
Behind the cover up.
This member decapitated. It's probably because you're trying to hide something and make sure certain details don't come out.
10 to Life with Elise starts right now.
Hey everybody, welcome back. This is 10 to Life and my name is Elise. I hope you guys can all hear me today because I know last time we had some major issues with my mic, so hopefully we're all squared away. Hope you guys all had a great weekend. Hope everybody is doing well today and thank you for joining. So a few weeks back, as a reminder, we covered a case on this channel and it was the case of Breana Nix, and there were a ton of red flags, guys. I mean, I'm talking law enforcement red flags, husband red flags, evidence red flags. I mean, there were red flags everywhere. And I know the majority of you who are tuning in right now probably are familiar with the case, and that is why you are watching. But really quickly, before we have Breana's sister join, I'm going to just kind of quickly give you a very brief summary of the beginning of the case. Then Brittany, Breana's sister, is going to join us. She is going to share with you her firsthand account of what happened that day, what's been happening since then, some insight into the behavior of the husband, the estranged husband, into everything that's been going on really, and some new developments even that I just learned about from Brittany myself regarding the DA's office. So let's just kind of circle back really quick and talk about what is going on here. And this really, I believe, also probably has slipped under the radar, and this is just my personal opinion, because it happened right in the beginning of the pandemic. And we've already seen in so many other cases, right, that not only because there's such limited resources, but because of the distractions, that a lot of things have slipped through the cracks. And this takes us back to March 2nd, 2020. And I'm just going to go back here and kind of give you guys again just a brief little summary of this. So Breana's 32 years old, and she was married to Stephen Nix, who's 34 years old. They've been together since 2008 and married since 2011. Breana's a nurse, and Stephen, his career was really kind of just peppered with little odd jobs here and there, whether it was, hauling off scrap metal, fixing cars, never really a career that had longevity behind it, so to speak. So in the beginning of their marriage, things were reportedly fine, things were great, but then in more recent years, things began to shift a little bit. And allegedly, Stephen became very controlling and very possessive. And when I first had spoken with Brittany, she would tell me things like Stephen would keep tabs on the mail that would come, so much so that if Breana had to send something out, she would take it to her friend's house to send it out. That he was monitoring everything coming in and out. She also couldn't spend money without asking him. And then I guess Stephen even started tracking Breana's phone. And we have all seen, I know, this happen in, unfortunately, a lot of other domestic cases where there is a level of, whether it's jealousy, possession, but like power, and this power control over needing to know what the finances are. You can't spend money unless I know. I need to know what's coming in, what's going out of the mail. All sorts of these things that just really are indicative of the dynamic in that relationship and who believes they should really hold the power, which, hi, spoiler alert, if you aren't contributing or working, you probably don't have a huge say in the finances, Stephen. That's just my opinion, and I'm probably going to get crucified for that, but it's just my opinion. So anyways, he would allegedly kind of keep control over everything. Yet at the same time, he would just spend money on whatever it is that he wanted, just without a care in the world. So at this point, he was no longer working, and Breana was holding down 2 jobs. So he would, I guess, also brag to friends that he didn't have a job. He would talk about other women. He would also post really weird pictures on social media of like women that are, how guys follow weird accounts and things like that. He would take photos of other women while they were in bikinis at the beach while he was with his wife, Breana. Just odd behavior. So ultimately, Breana had reached her boiling point, and she began looking into divorce apparently in February of 2020. But that divorce never came because literally just a tiny bit over a month later, on March 2nd, Breana's body was found, and it was found shortly after noon in her bathroom of her home that she shared with husband Steven. And she was an RN, so she worked the night shift from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And I guess after doing all of her reports, she would normally get home around 8 a.m. So then Steven, this happens, about noon, Steven calls Brittany, and I'm going to bring Brittany in now, and I'm going to have her just tell you the story from when she first got that phone call and when she arrived at the house and kind of, what went on from there. Hey, Brittany.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Of course, thank you for coming. So before you jump into when you received that phone call from Steven, can you just kind of just introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your relationship with Breana, the age difference, just so the viewers can kind of get, a sense of what that dynamic was?
So I'm Breana's sister, and Breana was the smartest, sweetest, funniest person you would ever meet. She was really shy, but after she got to know you and opened up, she would be just, so funny. And we both had, this weird, crazy sense of humor. So we could just kind of look at each other and start laughing because we would know what each other was thinking. And I miss just laughing with her. She was amazing.
I'm so sorry. And I know that this is really emotional, and I appreciate you taking the time to be here. And guys, please just give it up for Brittany, because this is not easy, not an easy thing to talk about, and definitely not on a live stream with a ton of people watching. So you are just extremely brave, and this takes an incredible amount of courage. So thank you.
Thank you.
Why don't I'm going to just also, for everybody, before you get into this, I want to just kind of show everybody a photo of your sister. And she is obviously extremely beautiful. She is stunning, and she has a beautiful smile. She just is a very beautiful person. And obviously, by what you had said, she's beautiful on the inside and the outside. So let's start with that phone call, because you got that phone call at approximately 12:20 p.m., correct?
Yes, it was 12:23. I was at work, and I had just finished eating lunch, and he called me and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I responded, "Nothing, just ate lunch. What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, you need to get over here. Your sister's done tried to kill herself." And the way he said it, he was so calm, and I honestly didn't believe him. So I asked him if he was joking, and he said, "Yes, why would I joke about something like this? You need to get over here." So I dropped everything that I was doing and rushed straight to her house. I got there a lot quicker than normal, just because we were running red lights, and we were going really, really fast to get there, because all I know is she wasn't breathing, and the whole time I'm just praying for her to start breathing. And I get there, and the whole street, she lived at the corner of a cul-de-sac. So the whole street, the whole corner was just lined with ambulance and police vehicles and other random vehicles from his family. And I walk in, and he's sitting in the living room with his parents on both sides of him. And his parents are both really upset. They're both crying. And Steven is just sitting there with a straight face, staring at the floor, almost as if he was nervous. And I walked up to him, and I asked him, and I said, what happened? And he said, "Well, I was standing outside, and I heard a thump, but I didn't think anything of it. And I thought it was her cell phone. I thought she dropped her cell phone, because she's always dropping it. So I left to go to the bank and the dump, and I was gone for about an hour. And when I got back, I noticed that the bathroom door was shut, but there was a light on." And he said he tried to open the door, but he couldn't because it was locked. So he unlocked it with his fingernail. And once he unlocked the door, he couldn't open it because she was laid up against it. So he had to shove the door open to get into the bathroom. And he said he noticed that her feet were blue. So he called 911, and he called 911 at 12:12. They got there at 12:14. He told me that he about passed out from doing compressions, even though they walked him through doing CPR, but you couldn't hear him doing anything in the background. I mean, you couldn't hear him counting. You couldn't hear him doing anything. He's more telling his story about where he had been and coming home and finding her that way. He did sound pretty upset, but to me, I could tell it was all an act. I could tell it was all premeditated. Just the phone call that he was making, I could tell that it wasn't sincere.
And you had known him at this point since 2008 when they first started dating, which is about 12 years, right? So you know his character, you know how he normally acts.
Yes, I knew him before him and Breana got together because my friend's brothers used to be friends with them. So he would come around and I would be, at my friend's house and he would come around, and I never even liked him when I was a kid. So when Breana got with him, I was happy for Breana because that was her first boyfriend that she had ever had. And she was in love. So I was happy for her, but nobody in my family since day one, since we met him, or since my parents met him, nobody liked him. I mean, he just, all he did was talk about himself or brag, or, he even would talk bad about Breana in front of her own family and friends.
What would he say? What kind of stuff would he say?
Just, she's dirty. She doesn't ever pick up the house. She never cooks dinner. She doesn't do anything. But she
had 2 jobs and he had no jobs. What? Oh my gosh. Well, and so going back to when he called the paramedics, there was something interesting with that timestamp, right? By the time his parents and his uncle got there versus when you got there and the paramedics. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yes. So when the first responders arrived, his parents and his uncle, that is a deputy at the local sheriff's department, was already there. And that his uncle, we were told by the district attorney that his uncle was actually supposed to be guarding the dam that day in Aniana. Well, it takes about 30 minutes to get to Stephen's house from Aniana. So that means he had to have called his uncle 30 minutes prior to calling 911, waiting for his uncle to get there.
Mm-hmm. And when the paramedics did arrive and they went into the bathroom and rushed to try to save your sister, what was Stephen doing?
Stephen was more concerned about taking the garbage out of the bathroom. This is a very tiny bathroom, and there's probably a dozen people in there trying to work on Breana and save her life. And he's more concerned about what's in their garbage.
And at one point, I think I remember you had told me too that he went in, he kind of skirted around them as they were working on your sister to grab something out of the garbage, and then scurried out of the bathroom and went out. Was it out to the truck, or was it to meet with his parents to pass off the garbage to them?
Well, they wouldn't let me back there. They would only let me in the living room of the home. So I was told by the original investigator that his mom had removed the garbage from the bathroom and took it to the kitchen. And then his sister took the garbage from the kitchen to put in the back of his truck. After they asked if they could search his truck and he said no, the lead investigator went to go get a search warrant. It took her about an hour because she had to go to Aniana. So 30 minutes there and 30 minutes back. And while she was gone, the father was trying to take the garbage out of the back of his truck to put it in the vehicle, or in his own vehicle.
Now that whole thing, first of all, is just, and I know I can already see people in the chat just getting pissed off about it, because first of all, at that point, I get that the paramedics are working on your sister, but technically that bathroom and that house should have been treated as a crime scene. And the fact that whoever was there was allowing evidence to be removed, things to be tampered with, things to be contaminated, then if you're trying to save the life of your wife or your daughter-in-law or your sister-in-law, why is your primary concern moving trash throughout the house, moving it from the bathroom to the kitchen to the truck, then not allowing them to search and look at it. Like, obviously, there's so many red flags in that entire situation. Like the trash being removed, the crime scene not being secured and taped off, moving it, all of these different things. And then, of course, the big one, not even them refusing to allow them to search, and then the dad trying to basically take it before they come back with the search warrant, which I remember when you and I talked, it's also interesting because his excuse when he left Breana that morning was that he went to the dump and that he went to go throw trash away. So why are you also, if you just got back from the dump, why are you so concerned with collecting the trash again, especially, again, under those circumstances? So what happened when they got back with the search warrant?
They did search his vehicle, and they found an envelope full of money. I don't know how much money was in it, but that's really all that we know that they did find, other than the garbage that they wouldn't let the father move. But they did take that garbage bag into the office, into their custody, but it sat in an office for 15 months and was never stored properly into evidence.
Gosh. Now, I know that this next part is going to be difficult to describe and to talk about, and please take your time in doing so. But can you explain a little bit about the condition of Breana's body when she was found, and the needles that were around her, the gauges, and the amount of puncture marks?
So 2 days after Breana died, her husband actually called me over to his house because he had something to tell me. He said that I go over there, and his whole family's there. They're all sitting on the front porch, and he walks me back to their bedroom, and he sits me down on the bed and said, "We found 2 empty vials of fentanyl in her spare bedroom drawer where she always hid stuff from him." And he said, your sister had a secret addiction that nobody knew about, and come to find out, she's been shooting up fentanyl. So after he tells me that, I go back outside, and his mom and dad and sister sitting there. And I told him that I was going to be going to the funeral home the next day with my friend to do her hair and makeup. And his mom was begging me to not go. She said, "Brittany, you don't know what it looks like. You don't know what a body looks like after an autopsy has been performed. You know, they cut their head open, they cut off. You're just not going to want to see that," and was begging me to not go. But I had to, because I never got the chance to see my sister. I mean, they wouldn't let me back there. I watched her get carried out with a blanket over her. So I had to see it for myself. And when I went to the funeral home, well, prior to that, I asked Stephen, I was just trying to prepare myself. I asked Stephen, was there any blood? Was there any marks on her face, like she might have fell and hit her head or something like that? And he said, no, there was only a little bit of blood in the sink and a little bit of blood on her arm where she injected that one time. Well, when I get there, the first thing the funeral director asked me was, "How are we going to hide her hands?" And I was thinking, what are you talking about? Because I was told that there was just, one spot on her arm. And she was like, she was confused that we didn't know about all of these marks on her body. So she proceeds to show me her whole body, and she was covered. The first thing I noticed was the back of her right arm. There were probably 2 or 3 injection sites, and that's what I said. She was right-handed. How could she have injected in the back of her right elbow? That makes no sense. And the funeral director said, "I don't know, but I have been doing this for several years, and I've seen several overdoses, but I've never seen one like this." And she then shows me her legs, her arms, her feet. Her feet were covered. There were both arches of her feet. There were bruises that lined up perfectly with finger marks as if someone might have held her down. And her hands, both of her hands had huge bruises on the tops of both of them. Her palms had bruises on them. I mean, all down her arms. Her thighs, the inside of her thighs were covered. It was horrible.
And in total, how many puncture wounds and injection sites did she have?
We counted 87 just from the pictures that I took, but the original investigator told us that there was over 100 on her body.
And now, okay, so, and I remember too, was it 2 weeks prior to this, you were with your sister, weren't you? And she was wearing flip-flops, shorts, and a tank top, and you didn't see any bruises, any injection sites, nothing.
Yes, and it just happened to be a warm day that day when she came over, and she showed up in shorts, tank top, and flip-flops. I mean, she was pale because it's been winter this whole time, but there was not one mark on her.
And now what's also interesting, in addition to these 80 to 100 injection sites, as if that's not screaming foul play enough, or at least warranting the conversation, talk to me about the needle.
So she was found with an 18 gauge needle. Originally, the husband told us that the needle was on the floor next to her body. So that's what the description says in the story that we told. But after visiting with the district attorney in November of 2021, she did confirm that the 18 gauge needle was in the sink, which makes no sense. If you're shooting something up that strong, you're not going to have time to take it out and put it in the sink.
And I had seen too, and you guys in the chat, let us know what you think, but I had seen so many comments on the previous video too from previous addicts and from people who are, work in different recovery centers and things of that nature that said, as a drug user, or knowing drug users, they would never use an 18 gauge needle to do that ever. Like, especially in her being a nurse, that she would know that and that she wouldn't choose to use that. But do you know anything about that, or can you elaborate on that?
I mean, I didn't even know what that type of drug was until my sister passed away. So I've been doing all kinds of research and talking to doctors and nurses, just trying to get as much information as I possibly can. And nobody believes the fact that she would ever inject with an 18 gauge needle just because it's so thick. And that's not even something that you inject with. And she was a nurse for 12 years. She would have known that.
Yeah. And as far as Breana's history with recreational drug use or anything like that, talk to me about any sort of drugs, whether they're prescription, whether they're not, that she's ever taken. Has she ever been somebody known to self-medicate or party too much? Or let's talk a little bit about that.
Breana never partied. She never drank alcohol. Rarely on special occasions, she might have a drink or two, but she never, drank a lot. And she never smoked marijuana. There was no marijuana in her system. She was prescribed to ADHD medication and antidepressants. And after the investigator did look through all of her prescriptions, they were all perfect to date. None of them were abused. And it makes no sense with her amphetamine levels being so high for her prescriptions to be perfect to date.
And let's talk too a little bit about when you went to the house and when you found the fentanyl bottle in her drawer and some of the other things that you discovered. And then you had actually reached out, didn't you, to a coworker of Breana's to ask her, hey, did she get this from the hospital, or what's going on? And I'm going to pull that up on the screen too, just really quick while you go ahead and talk about it.
Yes. So Stephen actually told her coworker about finding the vials before he even told me. And she said, send me a picture. And he asked why. And she said, I need a picture. I just need to know what they look like. So he sends her a picture, and it was actually a live picture. And his sister is actually the one that supposedly found him, because she had been staying with him for the past few nights after Breana passed away and was going through her stuff and said that she found them in the drawer. And so he sent her coworker a picture of it, and she sent it to me. That's how I got it. And she said, those vials do not match the vials that we have here. And she showed me that picture showing that they didn't match at all. And she said she had never seen those vials. And she had been working there the same amount of time as Breana.
So she would have had to have gotten it from the street, I assume. But didn't you also find a bloody napkin?
Yes. So the day after Breana passed away, my mother and I went over to her house to try to find her some underwear, a dress, all that stuff. So we thoroughly searched through her panty drawer just because Breana didn't even have a decent pair of underwear. They all were ruined. So we were going through all of her underwear, trying to find a good pair to put on her for her funeral. And we didn't see anything. There were no needles. There was no napkins with blood on it, nothing at all. And then the day after her funeral, the husband said, I'm ready to go through some of her stuff if you want to come over. And he leads me to a purse that had a syringe in it with fresh blood in it. And then he leads me to her panty drawer. And when he opens it up, there's a bloody napkin laid right on top of everything. So then he proceeds to take the whole drawer out and empty it out on the bed and show me all these needles that he found. Or he was acting like he was just now discovering all this. And there were 18 gauge needles. There were 25 gauge needles. The drawer had all kinds of stuff in it that my mom and I did not see.
And too, just to kind of circle back to the prescription medication, you had said she was on antidepressants and ADHD medication, but that she wasn't abusing them by any means, and that all of her prescription levels appeared normal and within range. But also something we had talked about too was that as a nurse, if she were going to use fentanyl recreationally or for whatever reason, she would know the effects that mixing all of those in her system would have. She would know that that would be potentially lethal. And so for somebody to argue that she did that anyway seems a bit crazy, unless they're trying to then argue that this was intentional and not an accidental overdose.
Right. And on top of that, she had pancreatic problems. She has been hospitalized probably 3, 4, 5 times in her whole life because she would be in so much pain that we would have to take her to the hospital. And they sent her home with some prescription pain pills one time. And I watched her when she would take one. She would get so sick, nauseous, headaches. She couldn't tolerate one pill. So you don't go from doing absolutely nothing, you can't even tolerate one pill, to injecting something that is more powerful than heroin.
And when we talked on the phone too, there was a little bit of a question of, could it have been a hot shot, or could it have been something else that maybe was laced? Do you want to talk a little bit about kind of what you guys had bounced as ideas or theories or possibilities about that, just because of the mixture?
I mean, it is a very good possibility, just because we don't know, because they never tested the syringe.
Which that's crazy in itself. Like, they never even tested the syringe to see if there was some sort of pre-made cocktail inside of it, or if it was pure fentanyl. Like, that's so crazy to me.
No, the fact that his uncle was there, that leads me to believe that he is the reason why none of this was handled properly and all of the evidence was destroyed.
Mm-hmm. And what the original investigator, am I remembering it right, that they have been removed from the case and from the sheriff's department entirely now, correct?
Mm-hmm. And she seemed to be the only one that was doing her job and looking into this. And after that, they get rid of her.
So now, if we kind of just take a pause on not only the circumstances surrounding this and all of the red flags that roll into it, it then, of course, leads us directly into the question of, okay, well, what's the motive? Is it because she was thinking of leaving him? Is it because of money? Is it, why could he possibly want to do this to his wife? And what was it? Was it 6 months earlier that she had started a new position and had life insurance and took out an additional life insurance policy, correct?
Yes, she started her job 6 months prior to her death. She did have to take a drug test to get that job. And she also had blood work done. But for some reason, I don't know why, she was a healthy 32-year-old woman with no children. For some reason, she was paying extra to have her salary doubled. And just the year prior to that, 2019, they filed for bankruptcy. So there's definitely motive.
And that life insurance policy was for $160,000, correct?
Yes.
And Stephen has cashed that out.
Yes, he collected it as soon as he got the death certificate. He was trying to get her week's vacation paid in advance before he even got the death certificate.
And now I remember when we were talking too, because you said that they had filed bankruptcy in 2019, that by filing that and then getting the life insurance payout, he wouldn't have to pay back any of his prior debts, correct? Because he had filed bankruptcy. So it would basically essentially be a fresh start button. Then this life insurance influx of money would come in that he wouldn't have to allocate towards any of this previous debts that he had.
Right. And I don't think Breana even wanted to file bankruptcy, but somehow he convinced her to do that. And sure enough, 6 months later, after starting her job and getting that life insurance policy, she ends up killing herself.
Now, between that, I don't know if you recall, and I don't believe we had spoken about this, but between the time in which he got paid out for the life insurance policy and when he ordered the headstone, he had this influx of money, but it took him a long time to order that headstone, correct? And you guys were harping on him to do it. Meanwhile, wasn't he purchasing like ostrich boots or something like that too?
Yes, he purchased a shop for behind his house. He had a concrete pad poured for that shop. He bought a new zero-turn lawnmower. He had all this work done on his truck and a new stereo system put in. And he bragged about all of this on Facebook, but not once up until August. He didn't even order a headstone. So my parents and I were having to visit her. We had to purchase our own little plaque that we put in the ground for her up until she did get a headstone a year after her death. But I mean, we were having to visit her with absolutely nothing. And not once did he ever go visit her grave. He still doesn't go visit her grave. His parents do everything in regards to her grave.
So do you believe, because I remember you had said when you first arrived at the house that his parents were clearly distraught and emotional and crying on the couch. So if they're still doing everything and if they're assisting that way, do you believe that they truly care for Breana and love Breana?
No, because not long after Breana passed away, I found out that they're going around telling everybody that they've had to carry Breana to the hospital prior to her death for overdosing in the past. And they're telling everybody that her family doesn't care for her. She had a shopping addiction. She spent too much money, just trying to make her sound like a bad wife and just a bad person.
Well, and I'm just going to say this right here now. If you have a shopping addiction, anybody, which I have a pretty big shopping addiction, you usually would have at least one pair of good condition underwear. And you were saying that it was very challenging to find that. So I find that statement alone hard to believe. If she has a shopping addiction, that she then has these piecemeal clothings and undergarments and things like that, that doesn't make any sense at all. But just to kind of go back then a little bit to the life insurance, the motive, he started seeing somebody very quickly, did he not?
Mm-hmm. The same female that Breana caught him cheating with 10 years before she died.
So let's talk a little bit about that. What happened 10 years ago, and then who is this woman, and what's some of the stuff that you saw on her, Facebook and the necklaces and all of that?
So 10 years prior to Breana's death, Stephen got a job at hospital in Coleman. And I think he was working as a janitor or something. He ended up getting fired. I don't know how you can get fired from a janitor job, but that's where he met his girlfriend, Stacy. And Stacy worked in the ER. Come to find out, she got fired for stealing drugs from the ER.
Now, I just wanted to say really quick, and I'm sorry to interrupt you because I'm sure some people, their mind is already going this way, but something we talked about is if Breana's hospital, if their fentanyl vials didn't look like that, but then these two people had previous connections to hospitals, to the medical industry, to friends who still work in the medical field, could they have possibly gotten their hands on something and gotten their hands on some needles? Continue.
And they still have connections to people that still work there. So, you know. So Stephen was bringing this woman over to my mom's house, claiming that they were best friends. And Breana was just going along with it, being friends with the girl. And this girl at the time had really short, bright red hair. Well, after, you know, Stephen and Stacy had been hanging out for so long, Breana found a short, bright red hair stuck to Stephen's thigh one day. So somehow she found out that, other than that, that Stephen had been cheating on her. So they broke up for about a year and then ended up getting back together and getting married afterwards. But that same female was seen at my sister's home before we even buried her. And she's now living with him. She's been living with him since probably the end of the summer in 2020, maybe earlier, I don't know. But we did ask Stephen, can we have the jewelry that my mom made and the paintings that my mom made for Breana? Just anything that my mom had made for Breana or gave to Breana, we wanted that back. And Stephen said, no, I need to let my sister go through it first. So just a few months ago, we noticed that Stacy's posting a picture with Stephen with the same necklace on that my mom had made for Breana.
I think I have it right here. So this is the necklace over here, and this is where she's wearing it, correct? This pearl one.
Correct. And my mom made several necklaces like that. So if you do look through her pictures, that's not going to be the only one that you see of Breana's.
Which it's like, on what planet as a woman, whether you truly are a mistress and this has been ongoing for years and years, or if you really are truly innocent and you come in, you know, after the fact, he's a widower now and like he's grieving, who's wearing the deceased wife's jewelry and then posing in it on Facebook? Like, that is just crazy and like super tacky, but super weird too, that they would just do that and like no problem. It's very, very odd. Very odd.
To me, I feel like she is trying to taunt us. She's even gotten on the page that we've created for Breana and doing a laughing reaction to some of the comments made on the page about her. And nothing about this is funny to us. And Stephen did the same thing when we were asking about a headstone that hadn't been there for a whole year. We would make a post. He's laughing at us. There's nothing funny.
No, of course not. Anybody would see that this is a very real situation. And if this husband actually cared about his wife and her family, which you care about everybody collectively, it's like, that's not how you respond. But going back to, so he and Stacy had these connections to the medical field from years and years ago and possibly still. So of course, one of the things to check immediately would be like, okay, well, any sort of connections, what do those vials of fentanyl look like? I would hope that the police would be looking into that. But also thinking of the idea of Stephen potentially getting something off the street, whatever that may be. It's alleged that he also purchased drugs previously off of the street for himself, correct?
Correct.
And so can you talk a little bit about that?
So I bought a dog from back in 2019, and the place that I was buying him from, I didn't know this person. It was 2 hours away. Stephen didn't work, so I thought I'll get him to ride with me to go with me to get the dog. just to make me feel a little bit safer because I have no idea who I'm going to meet. So he rides with me. I wish that I would have never even got him to ride with me because after about 5-10 minutes in the car ride, I could not listen to him for any longer. But I go get the dog, drop him back off at his house, and go back home. Well, he calls me not long after that, and I live an hour away from him at this time. So he calls me and said, "Hey, I left a cigarette pack in your car. I need to get it." And I didn't think anything of it, but I'm thinking, why are you driving an hour to get a pack of cigarettes out of my car? So he comes all the way an hour drive. And when I got the cigarette packet in my car, I looked at it. There was 2 different kinds of pills in it. And that told me that's why you wanted to drive an hour to get your cigarette pack, because that's what it had in it. He did tell me that he purchased Adderall off the streets. And Breana even told me that she would have to hide her prescription because he would steal it.
Jeez. So now, as far as where things are going now, so her death was ruled as an accidental overdose, correct?
Yes.
And that, of course, enraged everybody. And it's, it seems as though law enforcement really dropped the ball with this investigation and the crime scene initially, but also then some of the follow-up. So now just kind of share what's been going on with that. Let's talk about the grand jury, what happened out of that, what's going on in March. Can you just walk the viewers through everything that's happened since it was ruled an accidental overdose?
So as soon as they did get the death certificate, the original investigator did call me and my family, letting us know that it was ruled an accidental overdose. Well, I guess they let Stephen know that on the same day. So just a couple of hours later, his mom is calling my mom and me, letting us know it's been ruled an accidental overdose, kind of bragging about it. Not once did she say, "How are y'all feeling?" or, "Is everything okay?" She wanted to call and say, "It's an accidental overdose. Bye." And so after that, we were told that it was going to go to grand jury. I believe it was the end of October of 2020. And that day, the original investigator called me and said, "Hey, we were supposed to go to grand jury today, but it got stopped because the district attorney received a phone call that Breana had witnessed a murder and therefore she was murdered. Do you know anything about that?" And I'm like, no. I mean, Breana didn't hang out with that type of crowd. She never even left the house unless she was going to work or coming to my house. She was always at home, and she would never be around that type of people. So I was so confused about that. And she said, "Well, should I ask Stephen?" And I was like, I mean, no, if the case is still being looked into, I don't want him to know that the case is still ongoing. But she did call Stephen and asked him if he knew anything about Breana being a witness to a murder. And he said no, he had no idea. But I actually just found out a couple of days ago that was a bogus phone call. And when you're when you're a target for the grand jury, you are notified. So I don't know who made that call, but somebody wanted to buy some time.
Wait, if you're a target for the grand jury, meaning like if Stephen were a target, is that what you're saying?
Yes, they'll notify you if you are considered a target.
Well, that's interesting too, because one of the pieces of information that Brittany had shared with me right before we jumped on here was that it was said that the state is now investigating the DA's office, and the DA's office is who made that call, correct?
Well, someone called the DA's office.
Somebody called the DA's
know
office.
That Breana had witnessed a murder as soon as it was supposed to go to grand jury. So we don't know. We still don't know if that was a bogus call or not. She never told the original investigator that it wasn't, a mix up or wasn't true. So we don't know. And then we've been told the reason why grand jury was stopped was because of the pictures of Breana's feet that the district attorney had. And now she's saying, well, the original investigator didn't have enough to take to grand jury. But the original investigator told me that Pamela, the district attorney, was pressing her to go to grand jury, and she didn't have enough evidence to present. So,
and what was the picture with the feet that caused the stop?
Just the bruising on her feet, how bad her feet looked. That's what had her so concerned. But then that was the first meeting we had with her. The second meeting we had with her, she said she stopped grand jury because there wasn't enough in the case file to present to a grand jury. So we don't know. I mean, we're getting lied to left and right by everyone.
And now, coming across through just this last year and everything going on with the autopsy report and the cause of death, talk a little bit about that, because you guys are now up against a deadline.
Yes. So March 2nd of 2022 will be 2 years after Breana passed. There is a 2-year statute of limitations in Alabama to file a wrongful death. So without that autopsy report, we have nothing. I mean, we could not find any lawyer that wants to even look into this without the case being closed or without having the autopsy report. So, I mean, our time is...
Why are you guys unable to get a copy of the autopsy report? Because Stephen has seen it, correct?
Correct. And he used the death certificate to collect her life insurance. Why can we not use her death certificate to view her autopsy report? Her own parents can't even see her autopsy report.
And what's their reasoning for that?
It's an open investigation, so nobody can view it.
Then how was he able to get access?
They said the sheriff's department gave it to him, which that might be another connection his uncle has.
Interesting. So now you guys, it's basically a month away, and then the statute runs out and for filing a wrongful death. And so you guys have a petition going to try to get that autopsy report made public, or at least in your hands, correct? And what are the next steps? Like, what's happening right now?
I mean, the only thing that we know to do at this point, with it getting so close, is go public and put public pressure on the county to do their job, because we stayed quiet for over a year. They asked us to not say a word. It's still under investigation. Do not tell a soul. And we didn't. We let everyone think for a whole year that Breana was a drug addict and that she did this to herself, even though we knew that she did not do this. So we went for a whole year hoping that something would happen. Come to find out, they haven't got the DEA involved. They haven't brought the husband in for questioning. They haven't questioned the neighbors. They haven't done anything. So
Stephen hasn't even been formally questioned.
No, not to our knowledge, no. And so the end of September of 2021, it had been well over a year and a half after Breana passed, or right at a year and a half, I guess. We decided to make this page because nothing's being done. The husband still hasn't been questioned. You know, if we don't go public with this, we might not ever get any answers. So we decided to make her Facebook page. And now they're claiming that because we have made this Facebook page, that is their reason why they cannot question him, because now he's done lawyered up. He's had a lawyer since he received the death certificate 2 months after Breana died. But that's their reason. They're blaming us for going public and sharing her story to why they can't do anything now.
And is it still technically in criminal investigation? Because I remember there were 2 documents that you had sent me that didn't match.
Right. So her death certificate does have a cause of death. It's an accidental overdose. But according to the Department of Forensic Science, it is still under a criminal investigation, and that's why we cannot obtain the autopsy report.
So before we jump over to the chat, because I know everybody here has got a lot of questions for you and a lot of great advice as far as things to do, what is it that the viewers can do for you and your family right now? What do you want them to do? Do you want them to write letters? Do you want them to share this so that more people talk about it? What can we do to help?
Just sharing the petition, signing the petition, sharing the petition, sharing her story, getting her story out there. If it gets big enough, I'm hoping that it will put pressure on them to want to do their job. But
right. Yeah, I mean, in the very least, and mods, can one of you guys just jump out? It's on my community page, the link to the petition, so we can throw it in here and then I can pin the comment just so that everybody in here can sign that. But I would imagine too, for your family, even if March 2nd comes and goes and the statute does run out and you can't file a wrongful death, at least if there is enough attention on it for a true investigation to take place, maybe he at least would be held accountable for what happened if he was in fact involved, which would be even better than a wrongful death suit because he would actually be paying for what he did to your sister. So, I mean, even though the time is running out in 30 days, it's not necessarily for that piece of it, which is great. So it's like all the more reason why more noise needs to keep happening.
Right, because the more publicity the county gets, the worse it's going to make them look. It's obvious that this is a cover-up. If it wasn't, they're trying to convince us that Breana did this to herself. If she did this to herself, prove it to us. Show us the facts and we'll shut up. But they can't. They will not prove it to us. They just tell us that we have to trust what they're saying. I'm not going to do that because I know my sister. They don't know my sister. I do. And she was not a drug addict. She did not overdose. And if they can't prove it to us, we're going to just get louder and louder. Close the case, give us the autopsy. That's all we're asking for. If not, do something about it. But until they can prove anything, we're going to keep making more and more noise until something happens, because I know that she did not do this.
I mean, I know I already said it, but you are just incredibly brave and you have so much courage. And I can only imagine, I'm very close with my sister, as you were with Breana, and I can just imagine how proud she is right now of you and that you're doing this and your family is standing up because you are her voice right now. And there's nothing like the bond of two sisters. And I my sister's my best friend, so I feel very, very strongly for you. And I just am so sorry that you're going through this. And I'm sure she is just so grateful and proud of you right now. And it takes an incredible amount of strength to do what you're doing. And especially getting the resistance you've been getting and not back down. It's just absolutely incredible, Brittany. It really is.
I know she would have done the same thing for me. And she was so smart. She would have had all this figured out by now. I mean, she would have had answers by now because that's how smart she was.
You'll get them. There's not a doubt in my mind that you'll get the answers that you guys are looking for. So if you're okay with it, Brittany, are you okay with answering a couple of questions that come through the chat? Okay, perfect. So let me just kind of scroll back up here a little bit. A lot of people are asking and suggesting that you contact the insurance company where she had the life insurance to see. I mean, I guess, is that to put a red flag on it maybe? Or I'm not sure, but people are suggesting that. Heather's asking, why couldn't you guys get a private autopsy?
Well, to get an independent autopsy, it would cost anywhere from $25,000 to $30,000. So we have thought about that, but there's just a lot of money to...
But you could always do some sort of crowdsourcing, and I'm sure that a lot of people would love to contribute to that cause if that is an avenue that you choose to go down with your family. You guys do have a PI or no?
Yes, and we've had to pay thousands of dollars, to hire him. So it's just not fair to Breana's family on top of losing her, not having any answers, and hire someone to investigate this ourselves. It's not fair. They should have done their job.
I agree. A lot of questions too. Have you guys been reaching out to media outlets, 2020, Dateline, newspapers, just trying to get this picked up?
Yes. Just about everyone in the group has been, trying to tag or, email, write everybody, Dr. Phil, Nancy Grace, Dateline, 2020, anybody that they can think of.
So guys, if you can even... mods, I don't know how hard it will be for you guys to find those emails, within the next few minutes. But if you guys could even email the story, the Facebook page, the petition, the link to this video, the link to the original video, to all of those outlets, to, tagging people, posting to them, trying to get as many eyes on this as possible. I mean, I would imagine that if somebody at one of those places sees it, pop up on their screen 20 times or something, their interest will be piqued and they'll take a look at it. So maybe it just is a matter of power and numbers right now, and trying to just get this onto a bigger platform and somebody who can, really make some traction. Because while I would love to think that I can make some traction, I can't as much as they could. So I think it'll be better if we can get it to one of them. Let's see here. Jennifer saying if you go on her page on Facebook, you can sign the petition and donate to the GoFundMe. Okay, fantastic.
And there's also a link at the top of her page that has links to everything, her YouTube videos, all of her social medias, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that stuff. So
and that's great too, because that gives everybody insight as to who she really is. And I'm sure most people, when they see this, would agree that she's doesn't appear to be a drug user, which I know addicts, can hide in all certain ways, but I mean, come on. Ashley had a great suggestion. Brian Enton on Twitter. He's done a lot of great work for a lot of cases recently. So definitely, I think putting that out there. A lot of people are saying go to the governor. And let's see. Smidge of Random is asking, can a hair follicle test prove that she had no prior addiction?
We were told that a hair follicle or urine sample was not even performed, but there's no need to have a second autopsy performed.
And can I ask, was your sister buried or cremated?
She was buried.
Okay. Mike and Carrie are saying that her aunt is a DA and she sent her everything.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what else can we do, or is there anything else you want everybody to know about your sister and about what's going on?
She doesn't deserve this. Her family doesn't deserve this. She would not be happy to see her family in this much pain. She doesn't deserve it. She was a good person.
Well, we're going to do everything we possibly can to create as much awareness and make as much noise as possible about this to hopefully get more people focused. Because again, as great as it would be to get that autopsy public by March 2nd, absolutely, there's still plenty of things that can happen after March 2nd. So I don't think that anybody should get discouraged. I think if anything, this should just light a fire under all of us to really get loud and be noisy with it. I want to just thank you again, Brittany, too, for taking the time to join us. I know it wasn't easy and I know it's a lot, but you and I obviously are in touch and texting. So as more updates happen with this and you have more information that you want to share, we can certainly jump back on here anytime. I'm sure everybody's going to want to keep updated as well. And obviously they have a very vested interest in it now too. So we'll just stay in touch with that.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
You have got the most coverage of anyone so far. 70,000 views within the last month. Thank you so much. That's just what we need.
You're so welcome. It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. So yeah, a ton of suggestions coming in through the chat as far as contacting Crime Weekly, Brian Enton again, Dr. Phil. So I think that this chat is going to go to work for you. I have a good feeling that everybody's going to pull together right now and do something good. Get 2022 off to a good start here and do some good. So I think that you've got a lot of people in your corner, which is great.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all so much.
Thanks so much, Brittany. We'll talk soon.
Okay, thanks.
Okay,
bye.
All right, guys. So obviously a very emotional and very powerful case and update. I mean, what Brittany and her family are going through right now, none of us would wish that upon anybody. And while we don't know if Stephen is in fact involved or guilty, we do know that there was mishandling of the case. We do know that there are a lot of red flags. It does appear that there was motive. So where do those puzzle pieces begin to fit together? And maybe we're not the ones who are going to solve this case and get the answers, but we are the ones who I think can make enough noise to get the right people involved to take a second look and to hopefully get some justice for Breana, for Brittany, and for her family, and hold those who need to be held accountable, hold them accountable and responsible. So as I mentioned, as soon as updates are made in this case, and as I talk with Brittany more, we'll let you know. Please make sure to sign that petition if you haven't done so already. If you choose to donate to the GoFundMe, please do that as well. And just what you heard, Brittany, share the link, share the Facebook page, share the petition to the media outlets, both local, both mass, local, everywhere, and tag these people time and time again, because again, more eyes that get on it, the more likely they're going to be interested and they're going to take a look. So I think that's, the least we could do for Brittany and her family. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed the coverage. Please show your support for Brittany, show your support for her family, and hopefully we get some justice for Breana very, very soon. As a reminder, too, I know that a lot of you are very passionate about this and have strong opinions both about Stephen and Stacy. As a reminder, please do not harass, dox, or send hatred to any of those people. That is not the answer here, and that is not what is going to bring justice. We just have to find the right people to get involved. Okay, guys, until the next case, stay safe. Bye.